The Nigerian oil and gas outlook looks promising. Given the number of activities that took place last year and some policy pronouncements made by government officials, the industry does look promising. With the taking of final investment decision on Nigeria liquefied natural gas NLNG Train 7, it is hoped that the industry would be energized and by extension boost the economy and create jobs. Hello and welcome. I'm Garima, and joining me on the Dais today is Olufola Wusu, partner and legal consultant at Megathos Law Practice. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Garima. I'm excited to be here. Such a great honor because we've followed your work for quite a while and we're excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Olufola. Thank you so much. Now, tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in energy law?
Well, I would have to go down memory lane a bit. And in Nigeria, when you study to become a lawyer, you study to become a general practitioner. You do quite a number of law courses from land law to law of contracts to oil and gas law. And when you qualify to become a lawyer, you become a general practitioner. But I think I'll point out two oil and gas lecturers that I had in school that were instrumental to my becoming an energy specialist. I will point out Professor Ayade, should be Professor Ajibade. Those are two lecturers that helped me to realize that the oil and gas industry is pivotal to our existence as human beings, because we all need energy to work, to play, and to transit from one point to another. And that's something that struck my mind about an industry being so pivotal to human existence. And I thought, hey, I think I would like to help these people, structure their deals, resolve their disputes, raise finance, and help that industry move forward. And basically, that's what lawyers do. We structure deals, we resolve disputes, we help to raise finances in industries that matter. And I felt that by becoming an energy lawyer, I was also doing something noble, something that was fundamental to the existence of the quality of life that we live as human beings. And you know that oil and gas is not just useful for transportation and for energy. Oil and gas is also useful for the everyday products that we use, from your cosmetics to your combs, to your hairbrush, to your weaves. Oil and gas plays a crucial role in supplying the feedstock for petrochemicals. So for me, I think joining the industry by being an advisor, helping to structure transactions, working on policy, is my own way of contributing towards the benefit of the human race.
Now, tell us, how many years has it been for you in the industry?
What I count the number of years that I've been a lawyer, we'll be looking at, would I say 11 years going on 12. And I think it has been awesome. It has been awesome being a lawyer, starting out in early practice, the journey from law school, eventual qualification. It's been quite an amazing experience. I know that the industry has evolved very quickly, and the legal industry also evolves nearly as quickly as the business world that we service. So as a lawyer, basically, you have to be dynamic, because the people that you have as clients are constantly looking for better ways to do their business. And your job as a lawyer is to help them to do that business cheaper, better, and faster. And you also need to be able to evolve either products or services to meet the needs of a very dynamic clientele that you are privileged to serve.
And what is Megathos Law all about? What is the story behind this organization? What is that particular business problem and legal problem that your organization aims to resolve?
So basically, at Megathos Law Practice, we are constantly looking for cheaper, better, and faster ways of solving the problems for our clients. We know that our clients are dynamic businesses, our clients are innovative, our clients are creative. So our job as your lawyer is to make sure that we're looking for, cheaper, better, and faster ways to solve your problems. Whether we're involved in policy review, like we were involved in the review of the national gas policy or the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, we're looking for that unique way to add distinct value. And by the time we're working on that policy, we noticed that the initial LNG policy was strictly for exports. So part of the work we did on the national gas policy was to help to draw up a framework that will cater for the use or domestic use, for the domestic use of LNG. And that's just a practical example of the kind of work that we like to do. Whether we're working for big clients or for small clients, we're constantly looking for ways of adding distinct value to every transaction or policy or some project financing transaction that we're working on. We just want to be that business partner, that lawyer that works with you. We're not just, we're comfortable with analyzing the contracts. We're comfortable with structuring the financing transactions, but we want to work with you. We want to be that business partner that you can rely on, that partner that is always looking for cheaper, better, and faster ways. And that's part of the reasons why we have evolved either the Megathos and African gas events and the other events and the webinar series that we're going to roll out shortly to help our clients better understand the opportunities in the industry, better understand the risks that they face so that they can make very informed business decisions. So we're not just concerned with being lawyers. We also want to be lawyers that understand the business and the industries that our clients play in. That's basically, in a nutshell, is what Megathos Law Practice is. We try to, constantly synthesize the value for our clients. We want our clients to do better. We want our clients to do well. And we also try to, synthesize that value in such a way that when we work on big projects, we synthesize that value to help our clients that are startups and SMEs, so that those startups and SMEs can scale and one day become multinational companies if that's what they desire.
Right. And now talking about partnerships and different kinds of contracts and transactions that you are looking into, could you help us understand a bit about the oil and gas investment climate in Nigeria?
Oh, fantastic. That's a fantastic question. Before, or rather after the COVID-19 saga, it had a damning effect on not just the Nigerian economy, but on the global economy. And things slowed down quite a bit. I know that COVID-19 led to lockdowns and shutdowns, thereby really reducing greatly the amounts of energy that was needed. Oil consumption really slowed down. There was no airline travel, hotels were shut, a lot of industries were shut. So naturally, oil prices actually took a dip. It was the time that WTI prices became negative, and that affected not just the global economy, but also the Nigerian economy in terms of revenues to the government, in terms of projects for industries. A lot of projects were cancelled, some other projects were delayed, some other projects were slowed down. But there's a glimmer of hope in the Nigerian economy, at least two glimmers of hope that we're seeing. We're seeing one, the $10 million NLNG Train 7 project that the shareholders have decided to go ahead with the final investment decision, like you mentioned. Then we're also seeing the 2020 marginal field bid round that is looking at the auction of approximately 57 oil blocks, wells. And so basically, those are two areas of opportunities that any discerning investor looking at entering into the Nigerian market can look at. And that both projects are uniquely beneficial because the NLNG Train 7 project is largely gas-based, and the marginal field bid round opens you up to opportunities in the upstream space in the Nigerian market. And even though the marginal fields are relatively, as some would describe it, small fields, but it's still a leg into the overall investment space in the Nigerian oil and gas industry. I know there was a time that there was a release by the NCDMB, that's the body in charge of local content regulation in Nigeria, that we have approximately $48 billion worth of oil and gas projects in Nigeria waiting to be harnessed and invested in by local and foreign investors. So for the discerning investor, what we'll be saying at the Megathos Law Practice is the marginal field bid rounds 2020 and the LNG Train 7 project are two major investment opportunities that you should not miss. For now, I think in the oil and gas space, Nigeria is one of the hotspots that they need to be looking at because those projects will take a bit of time, either way you look at it.
Absolutely. And talking about the hope in the Nigerian economy and the role of SMEs and small businesses, how do you see them playing a major role in building the Nigerian economy?
Okay, fantastic. The SMEs and the startups play a major role because sometimes they start up a bit faster than bigger companies. Their appetite for risk, let's say, is a bit higher the multinationals will definitely do very exhaustive risk analysis, and there's some types of projects beyond a certain threshold that multinationals will not touch. But for the SMEs and the startups, say for example now, the marginal field players who can largely be described as the SMEs and the startups of the oil and gas industry. And I'm not saying that once they enter the marginal fields, they don't make progress from there. But there are some marginal field players that have today become big players. So basically, what the startups and MSMEs do is that they help to drive the investment, they help to create jobs, and by investing in this small or major project that they play in, they also create that positive multiplier effect on the Nigerian economy, and that's something that the economy needs, whether in Nigeria and America. And even for let's use America as an example. Now, President Trump is pushing forward a plan to invest approximately $1 trillion in infrastructure. I know that $1 trillion to build roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that America needs is not just going to be awarded to multinationals. A lot of SMEs will also and startups be involved in those projects, and those are really the entities that create quite a number of jobs, because there are a lot of startups and SMEs scattered all across the landscape. So back to Nigeria, that's the same thing with the Nigerian economy. So the NLNG Train 7 project, $10 billion, the marginal field bridge round that is looking at approximately 57 oil fields, would also be creating jobs, because a lot of startups and SMEs will be involved in the entire value chain. Say, for example, the NLNG, whether it's in the upstream phase, in the gas gathering phase, or in the liquefaction phase, the entire value chain would have SMEs and startups all along that value chain, creating value and being compensated for the value that they create. So in a nutshell, I think that's one of the ways that the SMEs and the startups help to actually create value in an economy. And of course, the SMEs and startups are also very innovative, because they know that they are playing in the market that is well established. And if you're playing against multinationals, you better put on your thinking cap. So the SMEs and the startups, more often than not, are the ones that spawn quite a bit of innovation that is protected by intellectual property. And that intellectual property is sometimes intellectual property created in oil and gas is applied in other industries, and even for the benefit of mankind. And there's so many examples of products that were developed for a particular industry that are now being used to save lives all over the world in different industries. So in a nutshell, that the SMEs and startups help to drive our economy, help to create jobs, help to create investment, and help to generate intellectual property and innovation that makes our world better.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now talking about the NLNG project, the $10 billion project, how do you see this project impacting the Nigerian economy? How important is this project for the Nigerian economy today?
Fantastic. I think this project is, like I said, it's a ray of hope. It's a ray of sunshine for the Nigerian economy. Like I said, the COVID-19 saga, or the COVID-19 crisis, slowed down the Nigerian economy, just like it slowed down economies all over the world. We're hearing of projects being delayed. We're hearing of projects being cancelled. We're hearing of projects being suspended. But the good news for the Nigerian economy is that there are at least two major investments that are coming our way: the NLNG Train 7 project and the marginal field bid round. So specifically talking about the $10 billion NLNG Train 7 project. NLNG basically is arguably one of the biggest gas companies in Africa, and is the flagship of the gas industry in Nigeria. Their current capacity is at 22 metric tons per annum. They have approximately 23 ships. NLNG has been doing quite well, if I may say so. But NLNG, looking at the trends in the global gas market, and considering the fact that between Qatar and Australia, the two largest LNG producers are doing between 77 metric tons, between 88 metric tons. So as a player in the LNG industry, NLNG is aware that it also needs to prepare for the more aggressive competition that's coming up in the LNG industry. So the NLNG Train 7 project is a way for that company to prepare for the competition in the gas industry. And so by embarking on that project, NLNG wants to increase their capacity from 22 metric tons to 30 metric tons. And you know that the more LNG you produce, the lower your cost of LNG per metric ton. And of course, that economies of scale goes a long way in improving your profitability. And so in concrete terms, what would that kind of project do to the Nigerian economy? $10 million is quite a bit of money, because if you're looking at Nigeria's foreign reserves are pegged at between $26 to $30 billion. So a $10 billion investment at this point in time is quite a bit of value. And if we are looking at the possibility of NLNG Train 7 generating between 10,000 direct jobs and with some estimates put it at close to 40,000 indirect jobs. So we're looking at quite a number of jobs coming into the Nigerian economy at this time. And the LNG, as the company was talking about, when they rolled out a couple of ships, being able to train over 600 seafarers. So we can imagine the number of Nigerians and foreigners that will be trained during the NLNG Train 7 project. And if you remember that the NLNG Train 7 project basically starts with EPC stage, that's the engineering, procurement, and construction. And that's going to last for approximately 5 years. So you can imagine 10,000 employees, close to another 40,000 people being engaged, like 50,000 people being engaged for close to 5 years, just for the EPC stage alone. And you know that the average plant life for any LNG plants is approximately 40 years. So you're looking at another window of opportunity of 40 years for oil, for operations and maintenance activities. So we're looking at a window of opportunity for close to 45 years for companies and individuals that are deciding not to, to jump on this entire value chain. And you know that there are other 6 trains in existence already, and those 6 trains approximately have a plant life of say 40 years. So imagine 40 years past for 6 trains. That's like 480 years of value for the initial 6 trains, 5 trains for the 5 years of value for the EPC stage for Train 7, and another 40 years of value for the operations and maintenance stage. So there's quite a lot of value, and the value also cascades along the lines. Along the lines, if you look at the infographic that I shared with you, the one that talks about the LNG value chain, the value, a lot of people will say that, okay, I don't have any affiliation to the EPC contractors, Saipem, Deo, and Chiyoda. So I know the value will cascade from those people, the local content companies, the subcontractors, the vendors, the special consultants, the original equipment manufacturers, service providers, and so on and so forth. So that's one part of the value chain. But you also know that for every project owner, even though that they abandoned it's not peculiar to an LNG anyway, in the oil and gas industry, because of the kind of value of the projects that they do, the oil and gas industry has over the years evolved different contractual strategies, ranging from EPC, EPCI, EPCM, and different contractual strategies to help to, control risk and maximize value. So part of the strategies involved was the engineering, procurement, and construction contract. This is an arrangement where a project owner hands over a project to an EPC contractor to take over the engineering, the procurement, and the construction stages. So that EPC contractor basically bears the risk and would subcontract that project to skilled contractors that will handle the engineering, the procurement, and the construction stages. But you know that for every project owner, even though they also want to reduce their risk and maximize their profit, there are some parts of that project they still keep to their chest. So for example, for the early works, the piling there's a high probability that NLNG as a company will probably want to do that themselves. The early works, the grading, and the piling. So the other parts of it will be handled by the EPC contractor. And you also know that as a strategy to improve profitability, NLNG wants to go digital. They're looking at ways in which the technology can help to improve their profitability, help to reduce waste, help to reduce their risk. So they're looking at the possibility of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, big data, analytics, how those things can help to reduce the risk, reduce the losses. And that basically your profits, your profits is found in your cost. And that's something that the MD of NLNG mentioned recently. So by going digital, NLNG is looking at ways, of increasing their profitability, reducing their risk, and also reducing their cost. So by going digital, they want to streamline their processes in such a way that their processes become, So let me give you a practical example. Say, for example, if NLNG tries to use, let me just say an LNG company decides to use artificial intelligence to, take over their customer care. So we have customers that are making inquiries. They want to purchase LNG. They want to ask about the closest vessels to them, how soon they can get delivery. If it was a human being that was manning that desk, you probably would need to check with his laptop, check where the ships are, check which ships are making delivery. But with artificial intelligence, that has, a seamless database, especially when Internet of Things has been adopted. All the ships are reporting to base. That artificial intelligence bot will know the closest ship, which ship has made a delivery, how soon it can get that delivery of LNG to that customer. And so the wait time for a prospective buyer of an LNG vessel reduces. So that's one of the practical ways in which you can actually use artificial intelligence to streamline your processes either as an LNG company or as a basic oil and gas company. And it's not just limited to customer service. Even for your ships, NLNG has approximately 23 LNG ships, and I'm sure it's possible that they'll be ordering for more because they are increasing their capacity to 30 metric tons. I know it's also interesting to know that the Qatargas, that has a capacity of 77 metric tons, recently ordered approximately 80 ships at the cost of $20 billion. So, the LNG industry basically is looking forward to a bit of growth. So, some analysts are saying there's a possibility that the market may slow down because there's an oversupply, but there's also a consensus by the year 2025, which is when these plants should actually be functional. A lot of the contracts that are supplying LNG to Europe will be expiring, approximately 40% of those contracts. So basically, there's a market that is waiting. So it makes sense to actually make while the sun shines. So basically, we're just trying to look at the kind of value the project NLNG Train 7 is going to create. So whether you're looking at the local content component, you are looking at the component that will be handled by the EPC contractors, like PEM, Dewa, and Chiyoda, or you're looking at the parts of the projects that will be kept to NLNG's chest, or you're looking at the possibility of value of NLNG going digital. I know that NLNG has made an announcement in May about the possibility of supplying LNG for domestic use. While some experts will view that as forward-looking statements, because in reality, NLNG's capacity is 22 metric tons, and that is a lot of gas. That's a lot of LNG. I'm sure you know that. The other LNG producers in Nigeria are doing 1 metric ton, 2 metric tons. So if you're looking at 22 metric tons, the other economy that I know China is a major consumer of gas, and there was a time I think I read a report that the spot market in LNG consumes approximately maybe 22 metric tons within a particular time frame. So you are looking at the size. If you look at the size of China's economy, and China has approximately 23 LNG import terminals. Right. The Chinese economy is huge, and it also takes a lot of energy to power that economy. So it makes perfect sense for LNG players who want to supply gas and LNG to the Chinese economy. But if you notice, I mentioned the fact that China has 23, if not 24, I think it has plans for a 24th one, LNG import terminals. So China basically has invested in that last mile infrastructure that is able to bring in that energy, that LNG for domestic use. So if you are going to be talking about LNG for domestic use in Nigeria, there are at least 3 factors you're going to be looking at. One is the need and infrastructure to aggregate demand, such that demand becomes commercially viable for people that want to sell LNG. 2, the other thing you're going to be looking at is you need to balkanize the supply of that LNG into small bits and pieces that Nigerians can buy and transport. Either we're having companies that provide LNG transportation, as a service, or the sellers are willing to actually transport the LNG to the end consumers, or like Qatargas or there's this company that was supplying LNG to Rosneft, signed a 10-year deal with Ghana. So I think they provided, or they collaborated to provide a floating storage and regasification unit at Tema. So they bring in the LNG ships or bring in the LNG, and through the FSRU, they're able to regasify the LNG from the liquid state into gas and pump it into the pipelines at the Tema terminal and feed the gas to the Ghanaian people. So same thing with whoever wants to supply LNG to domestic markets in Nigeria, you would need to find a way to balkanize that, that bulk of LNG that are bringing to Nigeria. One of the third, and I'm not saying that these issues are by any means exhaustive, but these are some of the issues that we'll probably be facing when we're talking about domestic use of LNG. The other issue will be pricing. NLNG supplies LNG in dollars. Nigerians pay for petrol, diesel, and other refined petroleum products in naira. So we are going to need to devise a system, one that would, aggregate demand, balkanize supply, and provide that fuel in a currency that Nigerians can pay for. But because I'm sure you're aware of the 2 concepts that will come to mind when we talk about domestic use of LNG. One is access to energy. There are so many reports that talk about the fact that in Africa and in Nigeria, a lot of people don't have sufficient access to energy. It's either energy is too expensive, it's difficult to access the energy, or the scarcity of that energy. Then the other issue that would affect the domestic use of LNG is pricing. Because of the concept of force switching. Force switching basically is the tendency of consumers to switch from one fuel to another, either because of pricing, access to infrastructure, or suitability of the fuel. So, and one of the key factors that affects fuel switching is pricing. If for any reason natural gas is priced in such a way that it's more expensive than the so-called fuels, that it's cleaner than whether diesel or kerosene, the tendency for people to switch from natural gas back to kerosene and diesel will be high. So it's one thing to convince people that, you know, LNG is the cleanest fossil fuel. LNG offers you cost savings. LNG allows you to help to preserve the environment. But if LNG prices become so high that the domestic market naturally begins to switch to other fuels, you know, that campaign for people to switch to greener fuel may not be as successful as we want it to be. So basically, in a nutshell, the three issues that we're looking at if we want to roll out domestic use of LNG: one, aggregating demand; two, vulcanizing supply; three, pricing. Because those are the three critical issues that I see, at least from the top of my head, that will help us to actually switch to domestic use of LNG. So basically, we have looked at the value chain for NLNG Train 7, whether from the EPC stage, local content stage, NLNG going digital, and the domestic use of LNG. And you know, by the time we now start, okay, it has started already, but by the time LNG for domestic use becomes widely accepted, the value chain even expands even more, from those that will be carrying out trainings on LNG safety, LNG transportation, LNG storage, OEMs for LNG tanks, you know, LNG regasification facilities. And you know that if you look at the countries that have regasification capacity, Nigeria really doesn't feature very strongly there. So that's something that we also need to look at for those that are looking at investing in that space, that if you're looking at providing some level of regasification capacity, either because you're an LNG dealer, a supplier like Qatargas, Rosneft, and any of the other bigger or smaller players, you know, whether you're Galileo LNG or any of the other players that provide access or that sell LNG. Because if you look at the LNG industry, one of the new trends that we're observing is LNG suppliers not only supply LNG, they also supply some form of infrastructure to help them to access other markets.
Right.
Because they have realized that Europe and some of the other markets, I won't say they're saturated, but competition there is very stiff. And we also have markets like Africa that are still suffering some level of, you know, an energy deficit. So it makes perfect sense for you to say, try to supply LNG to a country and also provide that infrastructure that would enable that country access that LNG. And like that's why I give that example of Rosneft and Ghana. Ironically, Ghana is a part of the West African gas pipeline. That's the pipeline that runs from Ghana, Nigeria, and the other two African countries.
Yes, absolutely. This is definitely a very, very promising project as far as I can gather from your explanation. But when we talk about the supply chain issues, what are some of the particular challenges that you can spot?
Oh, fantastic. So you know, we'll talk about COVID-19 again. And, you know, part of the challenges of COVID-19 were the restrictions on travel, restrictions on business, and shutdowns. And that affected the global supply chain industry, not just in Nigeria, not just in Africa, not just in oil and gas. Supply chain industry basically supplies and supports all industries, from aviation to zoology. People are constantly moving goods, constantly moving materials and equipment from one point of the world to another. I know that the shipping industry basically transports close to 80%, according to a report I read, of all the goods that are transported worldwide. And, you know, so that basically just points at how important the supply chain industry is. And COVID-19, to a large extent, was one of the, you know, greatest disruptions to the global supply chain industry. And so one of the things that will happen beyond COVID is the supply chain industry post-COVID will be looking at having to resolve a lot of disputes because of all the contracts that were either delayed, the contracts that were terminated, contracts that were slowed down. Let me give you a practical example now.
Yes.
So I was reading about a certain project in Nigeria, and the owner of the project decided to cancel the project. Was the drilling project. I know that for any oil and gas project, drilling is approximately 40% of the cost of that project. So by the time you cancel a project, basically an oil and gas project, over 40, not just the over 40% allocated to drilling, that value, you know, is quote unquote lost. So the parties can now begin to negotiate. How do we cancel the UPL's compensation? So imagine that 40%. Let's say the project was worth $1 billion. So let's say like $400 million. is gone. So imagine that drilling company had paid for accommodation, had ordered, offshore accommodation. Some companies come and fabricate it, had ordered for communication, had ordered for fixed wing airline flights, to bring in some equipment, helicopter services to bring in for staff rotation in and out of the rigs. So you can imagine how canceling a project triggers off a wave of disruption. So that's part of what the supply chain industry is going to be having to deal with. There are going to be disputes. Supply chain industry is going to have to deal with financing, because if you're a player in the supply chain industry, maybe you supply vessels or you supply some form of accommodation, and you lose a project worth $400 million, you're going to have to look at your books again. So there's some expenses that you may have on your budget that you may consider delaying or even striking off, if you know what I mean. And if you now have excess capacity and you're not too keen, I know that some of the oil and gas majors are looking at letting go of some staff, from Exxon to BP, 15%, 14% of their staff. So when you let go of some of their staff, the other staff that are remaining, you're going to have to look for a way to make them leaner to create more value, because you know that for your business, you're not just creating value, you also need to provide dividends for your shareholders, and you also have your regulatory compliance and other costs that you have to deal with. So as part of the supply chain, you'll be looking at maximizing your value, reduce your risk, reducing your expenses, and for the value that you have or the productive capacity that you have, you'll be looking for other ways, to create value using that same capacity. During the lockdown in Nigeria, I noticed not just in Nigeria, even look at the American industry. Ford, during the lockdown, the Ford Motor Company was actually producing ventilators. It made sense to help the American government fight the scourge of COVID-19, but it also made sense to keep the factory of production, occupied, keep that entire value chain producing some level of value till after the lockdown. So basically, if your supply chain was disrupted, although we released an update on that, if your supply chain was the possibility of resolving your disputes amicably, otherwise the courtrooms will be filled with plenty of litigation, people suing for some form of frustration, people that have been affected by force majeure. It's a disruption that affected all parties. So it will be wiser and more productive for all parties to find a way to come to some form of mutual agreement. Coming to a compromise may be more helpful than spending a lot of time in court. Then two, look at ways of streamlining your finances. Look at the costs that you don't have to incur. And if you have to incur those costs, it would be wise for you to actually let go of some of those expenses. Then three, try to stretch your value chain. Like, that's why I gave the example of the Ford Motor Company. So if you look at your value chain, like, who would have thought that a company that manufactures, cars would eventually be manufacturing ventilators during the lockdown? So look at your value chain, look at your productive capacity. What other products or services can we offer to the consumers? And if you notice, I gave the example of Ford because the Ford company was producing something that Americans desperately needed at that point in time. So even though there have been disruptions to your supply chain, look at your consumers. So you need to talk to your consumers, leverage your artificial intelligence, leverage your big data, leverage your analytics. What do your consumers need? And on top of our heads, so say, for example, you were a legal practitioner, there'll be a lot of disputes. There'll be a lot of disputes about force majeure. There'll be a lot of disputes about frustration. There'll be a lot of people looking for advice on how to switch businesses. If, say, for example, if a company that's manufacturing cars begins to manufacture medical equipment. So you also need to look at your value chain to look at if what you're producing is not something that is in high demand in society at this point in time. Is there something else you can produce? Can you produce that legally? What kind of licenses do you need? What kind of regulatory compliance is needed? And so lastly, I also want to mention as regards supply chain disruptions is look at the big picture. If you notice, beyond the initial depression and the recession, there are a lot of projects that are also coming up in different countries. So don't limit yourself to say projects in the North Sea. So if you hear about projects in Africa, projects in Nigeria, and the projects are valuable enough, $10 million is a lot of money anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, I don't think $10 million is a small project. So look at, and if you know, and for the marginal field bid round, there are over 57 wells. And if you remember that I mentioned that the oil and gas projects in Nigeria are worth approximately, in total, $48 billion. So that's a lot of money. So we're looking at value of close to $50 billion that you, as a descending investor, can have access to. So don't just limit yourself to the markets that you're played in. You may be familiar with doing business in the North Sea, but if you want to explore new markets, I dare say that you should look for trusted advisors like Megathos Law Practice. Talk to them, look for advice, look for viable projects, products, and services, and find a way to get your leg in through the door and look at the new market. And basically, that's the template that most multinationals follow. They conquer their local markets. Then, after a while, either due to adversity or due to the attraction of profitability, they begin to look for new markets, and they go to those new markets. Set up shop. They start small, begin to scale, and they grow. So basically, if you're involved in the supply chain industry, in a nutshell, those are the tips that we would like to give you. But we published a full update on that, and if you check our website, you'll find the link there.
That's very helpful, Olufola. Now, tell me, if we talk about these projects, there are various projects, and if there are any particular projects, notable projects in the Nigerian oil market, which you would like to focus upon and discuss with our audience, which the investors you feel might be interested in, please feel free to highlight them for us.
I would just have to warn. I wish I could begin to read out all the projects, but that is quite a bit. But I'll just mention a couple of them just within the ambits of the projects that are coming up and the projects that are in the pipeline. After Egina was a $16 billion project. That's an FPSO project.
Mm-hmm.
And after Egina, there were two major projects that were meant to come on stream. That's Zaba OPL 245 and Bonga Southwest Aparo. That was also meant to come on stream. But the understanding within the oil and gas industry was we didn't have enough capacity to take on two FPSO projects simultaneously. So, the industry leaders and regulators deemed it fit to take one FPSO project one at a time. So after Egina rather, we're meant to have another FPSO project, but not all the plans panned out as expected. So neither did we have Bonga Southwest come on stream or Zaba. Those were between $15 to $16 billion projects. They didn't come on stream. So after that, Egina, the oil and gas industry basically was, I won't say it was in limbo, but there was a bit of waiting for another major project. So then came the COVID-19 crisis, slowed down the industry a bit more. And the way of hope that now came was the $10 billion NLNG Train 7 project, which offers quite a bit of value because NLNG basically is a gas processing company. They also ship that gas. Basically, what NLNG does basically is, if you look at the infographic I sent you, that looks at the value chain for LNG, it starts with the upstream development. From that upstream development, the gas is transported by pipelines into the LNG plants in Bonny. The gas is purified, liquids are removed, any impurities are removed. Then the gas is eventually frozen. You understand? It's frozen, and when you freeze natural gas, it becomes a liquid, and it reduces its size by 1/600. And that's why the LNG business is so profitable. So basically, the traditional thinking in LNG business was the price of your gas would affect the level of the profitability of your business, because what you do basically is freeze the gas and it reduces the size to 1/600 of the initial size. But in reality, if you look at the Qatar Gas Company as a case study, Qatar Gas has a capacity of, say, approximately 77 metric tons. And because of that size, they're able to leverage on their economies of scale and there are other innovations that Qatar Gas has brought into play. But basically, what we're just trying to look at is the value chain. So in supporting a project like the $10 billion NLNG Train 7 project, there's going to be a lot of gas needed. So even though Nigeria's gas reserves are approximately 200 CCF, NLNG is going to require a bit more gas. So even NLNG, by running their 6 trains, have been able to reduce gas flaring by over 65%. So you can imagine how much more gas flaring will be put out when the Train 7 comes on stream, because of all the gas that will be needed, to provide gas for Train 7 to liquefy additional 8 metric tons of LNG. So imagine the other value chain, the other part of the value chain that will be needed for that 8 metric tons to be transported, all the ships that will be needed, all the men that will man the vessels, the marketing required, the entire value chain continues. So aside the NLNG Train 7, also having the marginal field bid round of 7 wells, and that gives any discerning investor an opportunity to play within the Nigerian oil and gas space. And it also, so those are basically the 2 projects that I would say that are on the table. And of course, Bonga Southwest Apparel will also possibly be coming into the purview sometime soon. Then Zaba, I'm sure as soon as the issues with those projects are resolved, those other projects will become. And there's a Kike. There's so many oil and gas projects that a discerning investor would probably want to have some level of analysis, and that's something that we're prepared to do. So those are actually interested in playing within the oil and gas space in Nigeria should not be hesitant to get in touch with us. The 2 projects that I will mention that are already ongoing, the bid rounds has been postponed till when the deadline to express interest. The marginal field bid round has been postponed to 21st, correct? Then the NLNG Train 7 projects, the EPC stage is going to take approximately 5 years. Operations and maintenance, it's going to take approximately 40 years. So you have quite a window of opportunity, but you also know that it also pays to be prompt. If you want to go after a business deal, it makes sense to go after it as soon as you hear about it, because you're probably not the only person bringing a spoon to the table. There are companies from all over the world. We have received inquiries from all over the world on how do we register a company in Nigeria, what's the regulatory framework for doing business in the oil and gas industry, what's the regulatory framework, regulating the LNG industry, what's the regulatory framework for the domestic supply of LNG. OEMs have gotten in touch. So if it's something that, if there are opportunities that interest you as a discerning investor, then definitely you should actually be getting in touch with us.
Absolutely. And now, Olufola, tell us about the project that is on the table in Nigeria in 2020, the marginal field bid round. Where do you see the opportunities and where are the challenges?
Okay, for the marginal field bid round, I would say the opportunities are huge. The opportunities are huge because, like I said, NCDMB had released some reports about the value of oil and gas opportunities in Nigeria, and they pegged the value at approximately $48 billion. So that's quite a bit of value for you as a player. Whether you're a small player, a medium-sized player, or a large-scale player, that's a lot of value for any oil and gas company. $48 billion is quite a bit of money. And if you look at the marginal field bid round, so the marginal field basically are those fields that were being run by IOCs, and the IOCs have decided that the returns from those fields were beginning to decline, and those fields were not as profitable as they used to be. So the marginal field regime came in place to stop our fields from being idle. Those fields that IOCs have decided that this is not profitable for us to run anymore. So the marginal field regime was set up in a bid to make sure that our fields are not left idle. And no matter how small the fields are, we have companies that are playing in those fields. And part of the other philosophy behind the marginal field regulatory framework is to allow Nigerian companies, gain a bit of experience, gain a bit of exposure, and to build capacity. And it has actually worked. Some of the companies that bought marginal fields in the past have become, big companies today. I won't mention the name, though. There are some companies that are actually doing well. They started as marginal field players, and they have gone on to acquire the assets of, some IOCs that have left Nigeria. And that's something that's worked. But to talk about the challenges that marginal field players typically face. Marginal field players, if you look at the experience, so from the last bid round, that was I think around 2002, 2003, they face, issues with their technical partners. A lot of them were involved in litigation with technical partners. And that also boils down to kind of legal advice that you're able to receive. If you don't have appropriate advice, you may not be able to structure an appropriate deal with your technical partner. And if you don't structure an appropriate deal with your technical partner, whether a partner that's bringing in technology or that's bringing in funding, there's a high probability or possibility that it will become a dispute. So no matter how well drafted your contracts are, because basically contracts are a story. I know a contract basically is a story that documents the agreements or the absence of agreement between two parties to a project. So basically, if you don't have an agreement in the first place, no matter how well drafted that contract is, two of you will probably end up having a dispute, or some minor disagreements may snowball into a full-fledged dispute. And that's one of the issues that the marginal field operators had to grapple with litigation, as in disputes with their technical partners. The other issues that they had were some of those projects were not bankable. They're not bankable. And basically for a project to be bankable, your financiers need to look at the quantum of risk that they will be exposed to. So if your financiers are looking at the quantum of risk that they're exposed to and they think that that risk is unconscionable or that risk cannot really be quantified, you're going to have a project on your hand that, may not be able to attract the financing. And even though they are called marginal fields, less than or 10,000 barrels a day or less, and those are small numbers anyway, even if it's 10,000 barrels, you're still playing within the upstream space because you need a drilling ship, you need to evacuate your crude oil, you need to transport your crude oil. So you don't have access to a pipeline like, say, the 400,000 barrel a day Transfacadas facility, or Neme Creek trunk line, and all other pipelines that you may use. You'll need to find other ways of transporting that oil and gas that you're making. So that's another issue that so the marginal fields operators also had to deal with environmental issues. And if you notice, in the recent years, maybe five years ago, a lot of the IOCs were moving towards offshore. Yes, offshore is more profitable, yes. But one of the other reasons why the IOCs were having that migration was because of the consequences of some level of environmental degradation they were either involved in directly or indirectly. And the local communities, in some form of normative fashion, were, erupting with some level of backlash that prompted the IOCs to leave a lot of the onshore fields to migrate offshore. So some of the marginal field players, they also have had to deal with some level of environmental issues, and that's something that needs to be treated very carefully, because basically the government will give you the license to operate, but the communities will actually give you the freedom to operate. So even if you say you have the license to do your business, if you pollute the environment and the community is unhappy with you, there's a tendency for that community to want to, disrupt your operations. That's not the best. So you also need to do that. And another problem that the marginal operators faced in the past was, the length of the contractual cycle. That has been worked on anyway, and the regulators have given us assurances that the contractual cycles will be a lot shorter than they used to be. So when the contractual cycle is a bit too long, that gives plenty of room for things to go wrong in any project. Your project expenses begin to grow, you're paying salaries, you're hiring an oil rig, you're hiring your facilities for accommodation, your project cost begins to grow. And because you're dealing with such small numbers, 10,000 barrels per day, 5,000, numbers that are not too, they're not too intimidating. You possibly want to keep your cost very low. And I'm not saying that if you're a big producer, you possibly want to splurge, you want to incur unnecessary costs. But I'm just saying that as a marginal field player, you may not have that quantum of value or that buffer zone to absorb unnecessary expenses. Then the other challenge I would say the marginal field players have had to deal with is the issue of oil prices. And I won't say it's peculiar to the marginal field players. Oil and gas players, whether big or small, had to deal with the issue of that cycle of oil and gas prices, whether prices are going up or coming down. Of course, when prices are going up, the oil and gas players are happy, and that's a section of oil and gas players anyway, because the refineries are not so happy when oil and gas prices go up. The refineries are happier when the oil and gas prices go down because their own feedstock is crude oil. But for the producers are a lot happier when the oil and gas prices go up. But for us consumers, we are not so happy when oil and gas prices go too high, because it also means inevitably, except you're in a country like Nigeria, there's some form of subsidy. The Nigerian government says that they have deregulated the industry. But while we are waiting the refineries to function or the Dangote refineries to come on stream, that seems to put us in some form of a quandary. Because if oil and gas prices shoot up too high, it means that the domestic, the pump prices inevitably will also go up. So in a nutshell, basically, those are the issues that the marginal field players may be faced with. So we're looking at possible litigation with technical partners. Yes. We're looking at the length of the contracting cycle. We're looking at environmental issues. We're looking at some of the projects in the past not being bankable. Then we're also looking at oil and gas pricing. You need to have a strategy to deal with, the spikes in oil and gas, and and the dips in oil and gas. Because it's one thing for you to earn a premium when the oil and gas prices are high, which is great. But if you also don't plan for the rainy day when the oil and gas prices dip, like we're seeing a wave of bankruptcies in the shale. The shale industry basically is a very innovative industry. I have a lot of respect for that industry. By coming up with hydraulic fracturing, they were able to access, unconventional deposits. The process of fracturing, you're pumping in either steam or water at very high pressure into the earth's crust. So you can actually fracture the earth, one of the plates, so that the oil and gas can escape. So basically, that was very innovative. But the challenge with that kind of operation was that it's a bit expensive. So basically, if you're dealing with players that have low cost of production like Saudi Arabia, and you know that this spat between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and coupled with the impact of COVID-19, basically was responsible for oil and gas prices dipping as negatively as they did. So basically, one of the advantages of being an oil and gas company is having a low cost of production. So that's one of the issues that I need to tie back. That's one of the issues that the marginal field producer will need to deal with. So you need to find a way to be able to produce oil at a cheaper, better, and faster rate, so that when the oil prices dip, you are not, constantly exposed, to the vagaries of the oil price cycle. The oil price cycle has continued for quite a while, and I think it will continue for a much longer period. And it also brings us to the issue of intellectual property and absence of technology amongst the marginal field players. So if you don't own intellectual property, you don't have your own technology. But that's a given anyway. That's why a lot of them have to rely on, technical partners. It also exposes you to a level of risk when you play within the marginal fields, because one of the advantages of having intellectual property is when oil prices are dipping. I think I was reading a report that this Shell making close to $2 billion from licensing of its intellectual property. That's a lot of money. So it means that Shell makes money from oil and gas, but Shell also makes a lot of money from licensing its intellectual property. And I think that's the same thing with Exxon. Exxon also makes a lot of money from licensing its intellectual property. So it will be, Petronas is another, I think that's even a national oil company that has quite a basket of intellectual property, and it also makes a lot of money from not licensing its intellectual property. And one of the advantages of having that level of innovation or intellectual property is that it helps you to drive down your cost of production. So when you're producing oil and gas and you're able to innovate or come up with technology or intellectual property to help you to produce oil and gas at a cheaper rate, it's in a way insulates you from the vagaries of the market. So I think in a nutshell, those are some of the challenges that the marginal field players may be faced with. But like I said, having the proper advisors work with you is also a bonus. Having advisors like Megathos Law Practice. We also have on our executive advisory team a former managing director of Baker Hughes. That's Mr. Yoshose. So that's that's an advantage that I think that we have. We provide not just legal advice for you. We also provide some specific industry-based advice, because we also have like a panel of experts that we can talk to and that we can bring on board when advising you on your project. So we are lawyers that basically want to know your business and want to be that business partner that you can rely on.
Right, absolutely. And I feel this is how having the local knowledge, our on ground knowledge, separates Megathos Law from the rest. Because as you said, you're not just offering legal advice, but also giving bigger picture insight to the stakeholders, right? So yes, that's really commendable. Now, Olufola.
Yes.
Since we discussed about the low price environment.
Thank you very much.
How do you think the Dangote refinery project, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, how do you think this project will be impacted by negative oil prices?
Like I earlier mentioned, the Dangote refinery, like I said, let's just go back to oil prices a bit. And basically, the oil prices are controlled by demand and supply. And so if supply rises and demand falls, oil prices drop. You understand that? And if supply drops and demand rises, oil prices rise. And that's why if you notice during winter, if the winter is really cold, we see oil prices rising, we see LNG prices rising. But the winter is warm and there's no major demand. Right. Oil and gas prices have a way of dropping. So basically, when oil prices rise, they have the upstream players. Those are the E&P companies are very happy, because oil prices means higher profits, higher dividends, more projects, more field developmental plans will be rolled out. If you check the Baker Hughes rig counts, all of a sudden more rigs are being deployed to the field. So basically, the E&P companies are happy. But when prices are a bit too high, the refineries are not so happy, because all prices means that they pay higher prices for their own feedstock, and they also pay, and that will be passed on to their consumers. And we know that if the prices of the whether petrol or diesel or PMS, as you call it, is too high, there's a tendency for, vehicle owners not to drive too much. During the lockdowns, as all prices or pump prices were dropping, more people were being to drive because petrol became more affordable. So basically, for refiners, when all prices are not too high, that's their own boom time, because the feedstock that they use for their refinery is crude oil. And when the prices for that crude oil is low, it means they can buy a lot more crude oil. And for those that have a bit of storage space, they can buy, store, and begin to refine. And because the benefits of refining and placing them on ships is that you can keep the ships on the water. So the refineries can actually refine those products, put those refined products on ships, and keep them on the water. That same thing happened with LNG suppliers during the COVID-19 lockdowns, when the markets were a bit saturated or the demand for natural gas was not too high. Some of the LNG ships were beginning to serve as some form of floating storage, because the LNG producers were not keen on shutting down the LNG plants, because basically there's a time frame. Your buyers buy your LNG in advance. So even though the buyers were not accepting the cargoes, it still made more sense to fill those LNG ships and to push them out. So it's possible that the refiners, when oil prices are low, will refine the products, push out the refined petroleum products onto the ships, and keep the ships at sea. So basically, for refiners, low oil prices are a huge blessing for them. And for the Dangote project, I think that's approximately $12 billion. So that's huge for us, because if you look at the value chain for the oil and gas industry, from upstream, midstream to downstream, the part of the value chain for the oil and gas industry that provides a lot of jobs is actually the downstream sector. Those are the refineries, because the refineries basically have a way of creating plenty of jobs. So one of the major advantages for the Dangote refinery for Nigeria and for Africa, I dare say for Africa as a whole, is a lot of jobs will be created. A lot of jobs, whether for those that will be working at the refinery, those that will be marketing the products, those that will be transporting the products, and so on and so forth. Another advantage of the Dangote refinery is basically for Africa, we import a lot of our refined petroleum products from Russia, from China, from different places of the world. So by having a refinery that can process approximately 650,000 barrels of crude oil a day, that's huge. I think that's substantial. So basically, Dangote's plan basically is not just to supply, I hope I'm right with the figures, not just supply refined petroleum products to Nigeria. It's possible that the Dangote refinery will not only supply refined petroleum products to Nigeria, so Africa as a whole, and even to other continents that will be needing is products. So basically, for the countries that will be able to source, like Nigeria now, Nigeria will be having, a more positive balance of payments, a more positive balance of surplus. The pressure on foreign exchange in Nigeria will probably reduce, because we are able to source our projects, our products locally. And I think there was a report I read that said we spent approximately, I think that one, is it close to 1.5 trillion on subsidy last year. I know over the years we have spent billions of dollars on subsidy. So people have been asking questions that we're spending so much on subsidy, billions of dollars on subsidy. Why don't we have new refineries? Why aren't our 4 refineries working? And the 4 refineries we have are basically in Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna. Okay, these are 3 places, but basically there are 2 refineries in Port Harcourt, then one in Kaduna and one in Warri. And those 4 refineries have really not been functioning at an optimal pace. And the recently released audited accounts of these refineries also show that the numbers of those refineries are not particularly impressive. So for quite a lot of industry stakeholders and I suspect the Nigerian government as a whole, the Dangote refinery coming on stream is a breath of fresh air, because it's also giving Nigerians a bit of leverage to develop capacity, in downstream operations. So beyond importing and distribution of petroleum products, which we have done very well in Nigeria, we'll also be raising a new wave of Nigerians that have the experience to run a world-class refinery. And I understand that China is also setting up its own refinery. I don't know if that's in direct competition with Dangote refinery. I'm sure that the people that are backing that project will be in a better position to do that level of analysis. But I know this for a fact. It doesn't matter where that project is. One of the major advantages that Dangote refinery has is that project is right here in Nigeria. So basically, for a Dangote refinery that will be supplying petroleum products, it will be saving the cost of transportation of refined products. So basically, Dangote will have the advantage of selling at a lower price than products that would be produced in another country and transported all the way to Nigeria. And like I said, at 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day, Dangote refinery basically will be trying to leverage on the economies of scale at refining at such a scale. So basically, Dangote wants to leverage on the economies of scale that will be available to that refinery when it refines petroleum products at such a scale. So I think that's another advantage I think that the Dangote refinery will be having. And of course, there'll be the technology transfer. The people that will be working at that refinery will learn how to run a world-class refinery that is functional. And, the Dangote group has had a very stellar reputation as regards the industry that they have played in. When Dangote moved into the cement industry, Nigeria was basically dependent on imports. Right now, I'm aware that Nigeria exports cement to other African countries and to other countries. So we are hoping that the Dangote refinery would also be able to, change, the fortunes of the downstream industry in Nigeria. The downstream industry in Nigeria is basically dependent on the importation of refined petroleum products. But as a sign of things to come, I know that there was a player in the downstream industry that sold some of its shares to another investor and has moved into power. So I think there's a possibility that some of the industry players have, genuine or positive expectations that the Dangote refinery will be a game changer in the downstream industry in Nigeria. So basically what Megathos Law Practice will be advising those that are looking at the Dangote refinery project is there's a lot of value for those that want to play in that industry, whether operations and maintenance, you want to supply equipment, or you want to actually, be an off-taker for refined petroleum products. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. So you can actually take refined products from Dangote refinery in Lekki and supply it to Gabon, supply it to Ghana, supply it to other African countries and other countries that maybe basically not too far away from Africa as a whole. I know because of the efficiency of the shipping industry, it has turned the global market into one global village. So basically, you can take refined products from Dangote refinery and supply it to Cuba, supply it to Spain, supply it to any country that actually needs refined petroleum products. So basically, if you're looking at that value chain, that's something that you'll be looking at, taking those refined petroleum products and, selling them anywhere in the world where they need refined petroleum products. So I think in a nutshell, the Dangote refinery will be helping to create jobs. Dangote refinery will be helping to attract foreign exchange. Dangote refinery will be helping to build up the capacity of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. Dangote refinery will also build a new level of skilled labor within the refinery space. Dangote refinery will also help with local content because basically that's a refinery that will be run by Nigerians. Then Dangote refinery will also help to build the technology of refining in Nigeria. Then I think Dangote refinery will also help with stemming some level of environmental degradation because basically some of the four refineries that we have are not operating at optimal levels. So we are having locally contrived refineries. When I mean locally contrived refineries, in some of the creeks, what the people do basically is that they have barrels, put firewood, pour in crude oil, they boil it, petrol floats to the top, diesel comes in next, but as simple as the refining process is, that's not the best way to refine crude oil products because boiling the crude oil will not fracture all the elements and will not help you to extract all the value that can be extracted from a barrel of crude oil. And so the locals, what the locals will basically do is after they have bought the crude oil for a while, skim off the petrol, skim off the diesel, the remaining crude oil that they cannot process, they probably pour it away, and that has a very negative impact on the environment. So the Dangote refinery would help to reduce that by mopping up, more of our crude oil, providing enough petroleum products. So if we have sufficient petroleum products being produced in Nigeria and the prices are right, it reduces the tendency for people to want to locally refine crude oil in ways that are harmful to the environment. So I think in a nutshell, the Dangote refinery, I think, is even another project that a deciding investor needs to look at because for a project of that magnitude, the operations and maintenance baskets will be very huge. Very huge. And that the Indian companies that are very skilled in, in refinery operations. They have quite a lot of Indian companies that have extensive technology. I personally met quite a number of Indians that are particularly skilled, whether in downstream operations or in gas. So I'm sure that investors from not just from India, from any direction that wants to look at that project should actually get in touch on how they can tap into that project as it comes on stream.
Absolutely. And you have actually simplified the whole Nigerian oil market for us very brilliantly, I would say, because it gives us a very in-depth insight into Nigerian market. And I'm sure our audience will be able to understand the dynamics and get in touch with you for any future projects or any queries if they may have. And now, Olufola, let's talk about your journey. You have been invited by the Nigerian government to review the national gas policy. You have been there on the list of who's who legal ones. How does that make you feel?
Well, I'm excited. I think it makes me feel good. We're excited that, a small law firm is also able to do great things. And I think we give God the glory. That's grace. I think that's just grace, nothing more, because they're bigger companies, they're bigger law firms, bigger consulting firms, and we're glad that we had the opportunity or the privilege to be able to play in the sectors we have played in, to be able to work on transactions we have worked on. And that, like I said, that one of the reasons why and we're not saying that oil and gas is all that we do, but we're just saying that we're happy that when we work on oil and gas transactions, whether we're talking about project financing or for policy, we see ourselves being able to make the world a better place, because when we see that woman that's trying to fry bean cakes using kerosene or firewood and the smoke is hurting her eyes, we know that by working on that national gas policy, we can make it easier for her to have access to LPG. And we know that when she switches to LPG, she has a better life. Her family has a better life. Her eyes, her lungs, they don't suffer that trauma that they suffer because of the smoke that kerosene and firewood generates. And she spends less money on medical bills. She makes more money, whether she's selling food, selling bean cakes, or any other snacks that she's frying. Or that woman in the village that is able to buy, a cylinder of LPG and put it on her bicycle and ride all the way to her house, and is able to use that to power her stove. She no longer has to gather firewood from the forest. That's something that gladdens my heart, that the work that we do actually adds value, not just because we are compensated financially, but because we're able to make the world a better place. I know that it's not just LPG, whether it's for LNG. LNG is another part of the value chain that we're happy that we're being able to play with. And one of the advantages of that domestic use of LNG is LNG can be used in dairies, can be used in companies, can be used to generate energy, can be used for shipping, can be used to power locomotives, can be used to power trucks. So the usage of natural gas even LNG can be used for LNG, can be used to power tractors. I've seen instances where LNG tractors are being used. I know because LNG is a liquid, a cryogenic liquid anyway, because it's very cold. It can be transported in many ways. So you can put it in a small cryogenic container, you can put it in a car, you can put it on a truck. So I'm saying that I believe that the work that we have done is to help people to access energy in a cheaper and a better and a faster way. And I know that the Honorable Minister of Petroleum Resources, that's Chimpreet Silva, has announced the year 2020 as the year of gas. And part of the year of gas is energy access. So he'll be looking at ways of getting Nigerians to have access to cheaper gas. And that's something that we're really passionate about, because gas is not just a fuel. Gas can actually be used as a means of economic development. And I can give you a practical example. If you look at the Bonny Bodo Bridge, which NLNG is co-financing with the federal government, for over 40 years, I think that bridge has been in the pipeline. But right now, that bridge is nearing completion, and I think that's a practical example of LNG as a tool for development. So LNG is not just a fuel. LNG can actually be a tool for development, because once that bridge is done, and Bonny is an island. There's no point saying that it's an island. So that bridge links up the Bonny Island to the rest of River State. So the people no longer have to take speedboats and ships. And I'm not saying speedboats and ships are not safe, but it's much easier when you can drive back and forth rather than waiting for speedboats, especially when the weather is not too friendly. You don't want to be in a speedboat on the high seas when the waves are choppy. You don't want that. So with that bridge, we are seeing natural gas being a catalyst for development of the local people. And of course, that's in addition to all the other dividends and all the other royalties and all the other CSR that company must have done. But I'm just using that as an example that, natural gas can be a catalyst for development. So for us, that's one of the things that makes us happy, knowing that we are working on transactions and working on policies that help to make the world a better place, help our women, our mothers, our wives have access to energy, help our fathers have access to energy that can power their industries, help our fathers make more money because they are saving, they are reducing their costs, help our fathers become more environmentally responsible because they are reducing their carbon footprint, help our fathers have less exposure to, some level of noise pollution because, gas engines emit less noise than diesel engines. So basically, we know that we are working on projects and products that make the world a better place. So basically, I think that we're excited that we are able to do small things that make a big impact. And because the year of gas is here, and we are happy and we're excited to continue to have the conversations that have to do with the uses of natural gas, industries that use natural gas, benefits of using natural gas. And, we're glad to continue to have those conversations from the dairy farms to aviation, to banking, to transportation, to shipping, to energy, in all the other places where, natural gas has made a difference, even to the communities, because communities have been complaining about gas flaring. I know those gas flares are huge, and in one LNG company being able to reduce gas flaring by 65%, that's substantial. So if you imagine if you have like 2 Olufola LNG comes on stream, Brass LNG in Bayelsa comes on stream, and all those LNG companies begin to mop up all the flared gas, I believe that the gas flare out targets will be met. I don't know if the gas flare out target of 2020 can still be a reality, but I'm saying that with multiple LNG projects, I believe that Nigeria will stop flaring gas in the nearest future. And not only would we stop flaring gas, we'll begin to monetize that gas in ways that will benefit not just the companies and its investors, but the community and the nation at large.
Absolutely. I have to say, I really admire your passion and enthusiasm for this cause. It's really commendable, Olufola. I have to admit this. And now, as we near the end of our discussion, there are so many students out there, the younger generation especially, who are seeking a career in the oil and gas industry. If you had to describe the career in energy law to them, how would you explain them? And what is your message for them?
Well, if you want to be an oil and gas lawyer, I would congratulate you in advance that you have chosen you have made a very significant decision. In reality, energy is a critical part of human existence. You need energy to work, you need energy to play, you need energy to transit from one point to another. If you remember from primary school when they were teaching us Mr. Niger D, energy is a critical part of our existence, and whether it is renewable energy or fossil fuels, because of the reality of a growing population and a possible population explosion, the energy mix will be a part of us for a while. And that's why fuel switching is such a significant principle, because consumers tend to switch from one fuel to another. So becoming an energy lawyer and oil and gas lawyer means that you probably always have work to do because industries need energy. Let's even give a practical example. Even for musicians, they sing, they dance, they entertain us, but it will interest you to know that the power to power that studio comes from a turbine, or will come from a solar panel, or will come from a windmill. The acoustics, the soundproof equipment in that studio, a lot of it is manufactured from oil and gas. Oil and gas is not just used for transportation. A lot of the raw materials that you see in that studio are manufactured. The acoustics, the soundproofing, the tiling, even the wiring, the coating is gotten from oil and gas. I'm just trying to give you a practical example of how important the oil and gas industry is. The oil and gas industry doesn't just provide fuel. So even though people say 30% of the oil and gas produced goes towards transportation, but oil and gas also provides a lot of the feedstock to manufacture the everyday appliances that's used, even to the microphone, the wiring, the soundproofing, the paneling, the lighting, the entire, so many parts of that sound studio. A lot of that equipment is manufactured by petrochemicals that is derived from oil and gas. So if you choose to become an oil and gas lawyer, you're basically going to be working on contracts, helping to raise finance, helping to address disputes, helping companies go digital safely. You're going to be working on policies, and you're going to be helping people have access to energy. And access to energy is something that is not just peculiar to Africa, because some other countries have a better track record for access to energy, but some other countries are still struggling with access to energy from Africa, some parts of Asia, and some other parts of the world. So if you become an energy lawyer, you'll be helping to solve problems that generations before you have grappled with, and obviously have not been able to solve, and are still trying to solve, and you help to contribute your quota to solve a problem that is a part of human existence. Because as long as you're alive, you need energy. You need energy to work, you need energy to play, and you need energy to move from place to place. So as an energy lawyer, you're not just helping, companies to either drill for oil and gas, or to drill, or to, capture sunlight and store it in a battery, or whatever part of energy that I'm being very broad, because the energy mix is not just about fossil fuels right now. It's also about, renewable energy. And there's been a lot of conversations about the switch to renewable energy. But you also know that the bridge fuel into the future of renewable energy is natural gas, LNG. And you know that for deep sea shipping, LNG is practically one of the most reliable fuels. So if you choose to be an energy lawyer, you'll be helping to keep the world on track. So imagine if there was a solar-powered ship that was in the high seas and a thunderstorm starts and the clouds cover the ship. It's obvious that that ship will stop, because the clouds will stop the solar panels from absorbing any sunlight. And even if it has batteries on board, how far will a deep sea ship with maybe over 500 containers, how far would it go with based on battery power? So you know that it's obvious that that energy mix will continue to be a reality for quite a while. And it's also obvious that LNG will continue to be that bridge fuel into the greener future. So basically, when you become an energy lawyer, you're helping to solve the world's problems of access to energy. And that's a critical issue, because access to energy has to do with the income of the average family. Access to energy has to do with health issues, because when you have access to proper energy, you have less health issues. Access to energy also has to do with development, because when you have access to energy, you have access to libraries, you have access to Wi-Fi, you have access to good roads, you have access to good hospitals. Access to energy also has to do with development of our communities. That's why I mentioned the Bonny Bodo Road in Bonny Island. So by that LNG project alone, we are seeing development. And it's not just the Bonny Bodo Road. Even if you look at Gorgon, Lake Charles, so many other LNG projects all over the world, the communities that host these projects have had a positive impact. And I'm not saying that every oil and gas projects only have positive impacts. People complain about noise pollution, about the number of people that come around. Some say they don't want that many people in their sleepy communities, or some say having to see so many strange faces can be stressful. I know that may be up for debate, but I'm saying by and large, when you have projects of that magnitude, say for example, the Gorgon project that was $40 billion, that's huge. That's a lot of money. So imagine the kind of impact the Gorgon project will have had on the Australian economy. Or look at Qatar Gas ordering 80 ships at approximately $20 billion. So you can imagine the impact we have on the Korean shipyards. And even when those ships come back into Qatar, so you can imagine the kind of capacity Qatar wants to have for them to spend $20 billion on ships alone. How much is the entire LNG Train 7 project? Like $10 billion. Mozambique, Rovuma, that's like $14.5 billion. So you can see the kind of value that Qatar Gas intends to create by spending $20 billion on a ship alone. On ships alone. That's amazing. So I'm just saying that if you're an energy lawyer, the world is changing very rapidly. Population is growing, and you're going to work on things that matter and that things that make a big impact. So if you made that choice, I don't listen to the naysayers that try to demonize the energy industry. Whether or not you realize it, the naysayers themselves are also beneficiaries of the energy industry. From my ties to my shirts, a lot of the things that we use, even to the microphones, to the earpiece, is manufactured from the oil and gas industry. And energy is something that we all need, whether or not you believe in renewable energy or in fossil fuels. So basically, as an energy lawyer, what I would advise as a philosophy is you should look at the cheaper, better, and faster ways that people can have access to energy in a way that has the least impact on the environment. That's what I would advise you to do as you join the energy industry. But like I said initially, it's a fantastic decision, and I congratulate you in advance.
That's a very strong message for our audience, Olufola, I would say. That's a very, very strong motivation to become an energy lawyer. And you have pointed out the roles and responsibilities of an energy lawyer very clearly for them. Thank you so much for that.
We would like to appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'd like to appreciate you for your time and for the questions. I think your questions have been insightful because the world has changed very rapidly post COVID-19, and
Yeah.
from the oil and gas producers, supply chain industry, even to those that are asking questions about, should I? And I think your last question was, it looks like you saved the best for last because, some young lawyers have asked me the oil and gas prices. It keeps, that oil and gas price cycle. Should I join the oil and gas industry? If I join the oil and gas industry, what if the oil and gas prices drop and, legal is taken as the cost center? Would I be dropped? Yes, you can be dropped, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue your passions. And you know that the other advantage I would say is of being an oil and gas lawyer, an energy lawyer, is you can leverage on the expertise that you drive
Yes.
or the transaction structure and the project strategies that you see to advise others. Say, for example, if you're an oil and gas lawyer and you're structuring a transaction in entertainment, if you recollect, the oil and gas industry has been existing in Nigeria from as early as 1956. Oil was found in Nigeria in Olufola 1956, and I think oil has been drilled in Nigeria even before, long before 1956. So imagine you been able to leverage on that kind of experience and exposure to structure an entertainment contract or a distribution contract. And you know that the value of oil and gas projects are huge. A $40 billion LNG project is massive. I'm not aware of any entertainment project that is worth $40 billion. I may be wrong, but I'm just saying that within the perspective of, a lot goes into making a project worth $40 billion work. So if you can leverage on, the insights that you gain from working in energy industry to serve you in any industry that you choose to work in, whether you want to work in technology, you want to work in entertainment, you want to work in shipping, it's value that you take away with you. So don't be afraid of the oil and gas price cycle. But like I said, just be versatile, be dynamic, and know that the work that you're doing makes a difference. For me, that's been something that has been in my heart, knowing that the work that we do makes a difference. And I'm not trying to idolize the oil and gas industry or to whitewash them. Every industry has their drawbacks. Every industry has, some of the things that they don't do too well. But in reality, energy is something that we need, and I'm glad that we're part of that story. And I'm also glad you're a part of that story by having this conversation. It also helps me to, amplify our voice for those that are looking for answers to some of their questions, or those that are looking for value, or those that have been affected by COVID-19 and are looking for new markets. I'm sure this conversation is something that, and just imagine that you're providing this kind of distinct value for them, just like that. I would like to commend you for the work that you and your team are doing. All of us at the Megathos team are very appreciative because I followed your work even long before I've had this conversation, and we appreciate the great work you're doing. And we are really, really highly impressed. So we want to say thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Olufola. Thanks a lot. It means a lot to me and my team. And thank you so much for helping us understand the various dynamics that operate in the Nigerian market and also with respect to energy.